Good morning, class. Today for reading, we're going to be going over the story Finding Winnie. And our goal this week is to be strong readers by asking questions as we read, before we read, and after we read. This is just going to help you activate your prior knowledge, and it will also help you want to find out more information. So, for example, today the book is about Winnie the Pooh, or a bear in the story. So maybe after you read this, you have some questions more about bears, or maybe more about zoos, or maybe you just want to find out more about the boy in the story, because this is a nonfiction story. So that means everything we're going to go over in this story is true. It really happened. So as you're listening to the story, I want you to be thinking of questions, because as readers, that will make us better to continue thinking and asking ourselves questions before, during, and after. Before I read the story, I want to go over some of your vocabulary that you will have this week. And for some of the words, I'm going to show you some pictures. The first word is veterinarian. So this is a person who is trained to give medical treatment to animals. Pace. So let's pull up a picture of that. To pace means you're going to walk back and forth kind of in a nervous, anxious way. So if you see this guy right here at the top of the screen, he looks anxious. He's walking back and forth. You can tell by the marks on the picture that he's nervous. So to pace means to walk back and forth in a worried or anxious way. Propose. That means you're presenting an idea to be considered. Assign, to choose or appoint as for a duty. Like, I assign you work on Seesaw. So that's assign, to choose or appoint. Vigor. Vigor is enthusiasm, intensity, or force. All right, so let's pull up a picture of that, because that may be something we're not really familiar with. Vigor. Now you can see the definitions and the pictures that pull up have to do with strength and force. So you can see that he's lifting weight, and it doesn't have to just do with physical strength, but vigor may be mental strength too. Okay, nuzzled, to lean or snuggle against. So let's see what that would look like. There's a picture of nuzzling. The two lions are kind of snuggled up next to each other, and the mom is rubbing her nose against the baby. That's nuzzle. The next word, navigator. This is a person who will direct the route or course. Voyage. You've probably heard of this word before. It is just a long journey, and it can be by land, air, or sea. Terraces. Maybe you've heard of this and probably not. So I'm going to show you a picture of what a terrace is. A terrace is a flat, raised section of the ground. So let's see what that looks like. So here's several terraces. You can see how they're flat, and then there's raised parts that keep getting higher and higher. So that is an example of a terrace. Raised, flat land. Your next word is enclosure. So think of a zoo. They call those cages. They don't like to call them cages. So at a zoo, they call them enclosures, where the animals are. So a space that is surrounded or closed off from other things. Beloved, that means deeply loved. Unveiled. You know, the word is spelled kind of differently than how we say it. Veil is V-E-I-L. So to unveil means to remove the cover from something, especially when being displayed for the first time. So let's look at a picture of that. Unveil. To uncover. So think of these curtains that you see here. They're being pulled back to reveal something behind those curtains. So unveil means to show something that is hidden. Okay? Scroll, to move so that some parts appear as other parts disappear. So if I'm scrolling with my mouse, see how those pages disappeared? I'm scrolling. Trapper, a person who traps wild animals and sells their furs. So a trapper is just what we call the person who traps animals and sells their furs. Okay. Journey, a long trip from one place to another, so kind of like a voyage. Salute, to greet with respect and goodwill. So we've all seen people be saluted, or maybe you've saluted somebody. Regiment, this is a troop of soldiers. So let's look at a picture of a regiment. This will be the last photo. So that's what they mean by regiment. It's just a group of soldiers. You might also hear it called a platoon. So that is regiment. And the last definition or vocabulary word that you have this week is roar. You may be thinking roar like a lion, but in this case, in this story, the word roar is being used to laugh loudly. So you may hear it used about laughing in this story today. Okay? So now, let's look at our book, Finding Winnie. So you see the cute little bear. It says The True Story of the World's Most Famous Bear by Lindsay Maddock. And I want to go ahead and read the inside cover. It says, before Winnie the Pooh, there was a real bear named Winnie. In 1914, which is over 100 years ago, Harry Colburn, a veterinarian, on his way to 10 horses in World War I, followed his heart and rescued a baby bear. He named her Winnie after his hometown of Winnipeg, and he took the bear to war. Harry Colburn's real-life great-granddaughter tells the story of a remarkable friendship and an even more remarkable journey, from the fields of Canada to a convoy across the ocean to an army base in England, and finally to the London Zoo, where Winnie made another new friend, a real boy named Christopher Robin. Here is the remarkable true story of the bear who inspired Winnie the Pooh. Could you tell me a story? Asked Cole. It's awfully late. It was long past dark and time to be asleep. What kind of story? You know, a true story, one about a bear. We cuddled up close. I'll do my best, I said. A very long time ago, about 100 years before you were born, there was a veterinarian who lived in Winnipeg. His name was Harry Colburn. A vegetarian? Said Cole. Bear doesn't like vegetables. A veterinarian. It means an animal doctor. I know that, Cole said. That's what I'm going to maybe be when I'm big. If a horse had the hiccups or a cow had a cough, Harry knew how to make them feel just right. Harry's hands were never cold, even in Winnipeg, where winters are so frosty that icicles grow on the insides of your nose. That was just the kind of doctor he was. But a day came when Harry had to say goodbye to Winnipeg. There was a war far, far away, beyond the end of the country and on the other side of the ocean, and he was going to help. He would be caring for the soldiers' horses. Harry rode east on a train full of other soldiers. He leaned his head against the window, watching the land scroll by, wondering what it would be like to be so far from home. Are you starting to get some questions in your head about the story? I'm kind of wondering how old this Harry is for him to have to go to war. In the pictures, he looks kind of young. The train rolled right through dinner and over the sunset and around 10 o'clock and into a nap and out the next day until it stopped at a place called White River. Harry decided to stretch his legs. On the train platform was a man on a bench with a baby. A baby? Said Cole, annoyed. a baby bear, a cub. Harry stopped. It's not every day that you see a bear cub at a train station. That bear has lost its mother, he thought, and that man must be the trapper who got her. What do trappers do? Asked Cole. It's what trappers don't do. They don't raise bears. Raise them? You know, I said. Love them. Harry thought for a long time. Then he said to himself, there is something special about that bear. He felt inside his pocket and said, I shouldn't. He paced back and forth and said, I can't. Then his heart made up his mind, and he walked up to the trapper and said, I'll give you $20 for the bear. Is $20 a lot? Asked Cole. Back then, I said, even more than a lot. So you can see one of our definitions, pace. He's not sure and he's walking back and forth, trying to make up his mind what he wants to do. Captain Colburn, said the colonel on the train as the little bear sniffed at his knees. We are on a journey of thousands of miles heading into the thick of battle, and you propose to bring this most dangerous creature? Bear stood straight up on her hind legs as if to salute the colonel. The colonel stopped speaking at once, and then, in quite a different voice, he said, Oh, hello. The men of Harry's regiment squeezed by to have a look. I've decided to name her Winnipeg, Harry told them, so we'll never be far from home. Winnie for short. They had a very long way to travel, and they had already gone 3 or 4 feet when Winnie grew very hungry. What do bears eat? The men wondered. What don't they eat? Said Harry. Vegetables, Cole reminded me. Winnie ate vegetables, I said. She ate everything except onions. They brought her carrots and potatoes and apples and tomatoes and eggs and beans and bread and a tin of fish and some slop in a dish. But Winnie was still hungry. How about dessert? Said Harry, holding up a bottle of condensed milk, taking the treat in her paws. Winnie lay on her back and hummed a happy song as she drank. The men roared. See, in this case, roared is laughing very loudly. You can see the men over here laughing at the bear drinking out of a bottle. Harry and Winnie gathered with soldiers from all over Canada in the green fields of Valcartier. A whole city of tents had sprung up there. One was a hospital for horses where Harry went to work. Winnie was in the army now. Harry taught her to stand up straight and hold her head high and turn this way and that, just so. Soon she was assigned her own post. Even the colonel agreed that Winnie was a remarkable bear. She might have been the best navigator in the whole army. If you hid something, could she find it? She could. What if it was farther away and farther still? Remarkable, he cried. In the evenings, both of them were too tired to move. When Harry thought about Winnie and the voyage across the ocean, his head said, I shouldn't. His head said, I can't. But his heart made up his mind. Nobody had ever tried to float so many people and animals across the Atlantic Ocean before. 30 ships sailed together carrying about 36,000 men and about 7,500 horses, and about one bear named Winnie. When they finally arrived in England, the regiment went to training on the Salisbury Plain, where it rained and rained and rained. But Winnie didn't seem to mind. She was the mascot of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade, and she attended her post with vigor. One day, Harry came running while she was doing her exercises in the tent. Go bring the whole place down, he said with a laugh. She had grown. It was winter when the order came. The time had come to fight. Winnie posed proudly with the men for pictures to send home to their families. Harry thought for a long time. His head argued one way and then the other, but his heart made up his mind. He went to Winnie and said in a serious way, There's somewhere we need to go. Winnie brushed the mud off her nose and nuzzled in close. Nuzzled? See how they're close together. Harry drove all the way to the big city. "Here we are," said Harry, "the London Zoo." Harry took a deep breath. "Winnie, this is going to be your home for a while," he said. She tilted her head. "We're shipping you out to France," he explained. "I have to take care of the horses at the front." She rested her big head against him. "I know you want to come, but it's not safe." Winnie's head bowed. Harry's hands were warm as sunshine, as usual. "There is something you must always remember," Harry said. "It's the most important thing, really. Even if we're apart, I'll always love you. You'll always be my bear." "Is that the end?" "That's the end of Harry and Winnie's story," I said. "But I don't want it to be over," said Cole. "Sometimes," I said, "you have to let one story end so the next one can begin." "How do you know when that will happen?" "You don't," I said, "which is why you should always carry on." What story do you think is going to begin next? Once upon a time, there was a little boy with a stuffed bear. He'd had his bear ever since he was a baby, but somehow the boy had never found the right name for him. He'd tried Teddy and Edward and even Big Bear. One day, the boy went to visit the London Zoo with his father, and there was a bear, a real bear, on the terraces there. Okay, you see how the terraces are raised pieces of land. Okay. Right away, the boy thought, there is something special about that bear. Her name was Winnie. They became true friends. The boy was allowed to come right inside her enclosure to play. Once the boy had found Winnie, he knew just what to call his stuffed bear. He named it Winnie the Pooh. And the boy was called Cole, said Cole. His name was Christopher Robin. Milne. Christopher Robin would visit Winnie at the zoo, and then he would take his stuffed animal on all sorts of adventures in the wood behind his home. His father, Alexander Milne, wrote books all about them. Harry's Winnie became Winnie the Pooh, and there has never been a more beloved bear. But what about Harry? Cole asked. When Harry visited Winnie at the zoo, he saw how happy she was. She was being raised. She was truly loved. And that was all he had ever wanted from the moment they met at the train station in White River. So after the war, Harry returned to Winnipeg and his life as an animal doctor. Before long, he was married and had a son named Fred. And Fred had a daughter named Lorene. And Lorene had a daughter named Lindsay, which is me. And then I had a son. When I saw you, I thought, there is something special about this boy. So I named you after your great-great-grandfather, Captain Harry Colburn. I named you Cole. That's me, said Cole in a whisper. That's you. And that's Winnie? Yes, I said, that's Winnie. And it's all true? Sometimes the best stories are, I said. Cole's eyes grew big, and he said nothing for a long time. Then he hugged his own bear close and let out a yawn that reached far away, and they both turned over and fell asleep. So here is the real Harry as a young soldier. It also has the diary where Harry kept diaries throughout World War I. This was the diary from 1914, the first year of the war. The diary page from the day Harry found Winnie on August 24th, 1914. He wrote, "Bought bear, $20." So this is just all the factual information and pictures that they've included in the book. So here he is There's Winnie with the soldiers at her post. Here's Winnie and Harry. And there's Harry and his fellow soldiers with their mascot Winnie. See, there's Winnie in the lap of one of the soldiers. This picture of Winnie and Harry inspired the statues that now stand in Winnipeg and London. So here's the statue in Winnipeg, and it was unveiled in 1992. This official animal record card shows that Winnie began her stay at the London Zoo on December 9, 1914. This photo was taken of Winnie and Christopher Robin in 1925 at the zoo after they became friends. Christopher Robin's father, A.A. Milne, watches them play from above. Look how big that bear is. Lindsay and Cole in 2013. We knew there was something special about this boy. So, Lindsay was the author. I hope you enjoyed this story, and we will be doing activities on this book throughout the week, but make sure you're logging into Epic and rereading the story or listening to the story so you'll be ready for your comprehension check on Friday.